They say life begins at 40, but rarely do we ask what begins, or more hauntingly, what ends at 80. Imagine a woman who danced through her 70s, sharp-eyed and silver-haired, laughing with the grandkids, debating politics over dinner, remembering birthdays by heart. And then, 1 year into her 80s, something shifts. Not all at once, but subtly, like a house settling in silence. You don't notice until the cracks appear. The mail goes unopened for days. Her steps slow, though she says she's fine. The TV stays on longer while the phone rings less. We like to think aging is a steady line, that those who make it past the milestone years are safe, wise, durable. But too often, we see that's a myth. People don't fall off the cliff of life because of one bad gene or one tragic event. They fade because of a series of almost invisible cuts to their rhythm, vitality, and meaning. And this isn't about vitamins or cholesterol levels or treadmill readings. This is about the internal story of staying human. So why do so many people who seemed full of life at 78 start withdrawing from it at 83? Why does it feel like vitality has an expiration date? To answer that, we're diving into the overlooked, the emotional, the environmental, the hidden fractures that begin to show when the scaffolding of routine and connection quietly erodes. These aren't just medical problems, they're existential ones, and until we confront them, the odds are that most of us, even the sharpest, healthiest, most loved, might not just grow old, but grow invisible. In this journey, we'll uncover 5 overlooked forces that accelerate decline after 80, not the ones we always talk about like diet or genetics, but the quiet forces that steal years in silence, and we'll also explore what to do about them before it's too late. Because the goal isn't just to live long, it's to live present, aware, and connected. Even when the world starts to forget your name, it doesn't begin with a grand goodbye. It starts with skipping a trip to the corner store, choosing home delivery instead, or letting your neighbor's wave go unanswered one afternoon because you're just not in the mood. And slowly, what we once called life begins to flatten. What researchers have dubbed micro-social engagement sounds clinical, but it's anything but. It's the string of tiny, seemingly meaningless interactions that used to pepper our days. A nod to the dog walker, a joke with the barista, a question about the weather from the pharmacist. These moments weren't just noise. They were nourishment for the mind, the mood, the memory. Our nervous system doesn't just crave deep friendships. It feeds on these small signals that say, "You're still seen, still here, still part of this world." But past 80, those moments quietly vanish. Not because people no longer care, but because the infrastructure of their lives shifts. Maybe the knees hurt too much to walk outside. The hearing isn't sharp enough to enjoy small talk, or family insists they rest instead of run errands. And though it feels like taking it easy, the body hears something else: retreat, withdrawal, irrelevance. I once spoke to an older man who used to stop by the same coffee shop every morning, not for the coffee, but for the 3-minute chat with the girl behind the counter who knew his name and how he liked his toast. When the shop closed, he stopped going out altogether. 6 months later, he had lost interest in reading, barely remembered his neighbor's name, and said he just felt out of it all the time. He didn't have dementia, he had disconnection. And that disconnection mimics decline. Loneliness isn't just sadness, it's inflammation, reduced immunity, accelerated brain shrinkage. And the tragedy is how preventable it is, because the antidote isn't complicated, it's presence. It's putting yourself in the way of life, even in small ways. So when we tell our elders to stay inside, to avoid risk, to let others handle things, We must be careful. We're not also telling them to disappear. If the mind is a garden, then these tiny social touch points are sunlight. Neglect them too long, and even the most vibrant soul will start to wilt. There's a fine line between being careful and being trapped by caution, and after 80, that line blurs quickly. It starts with good intentions, maybe a slip in the shower, a stumble on uneven pavement. Nothing broken, just a scare. And suddenly, every movement becomes a negotiation with fear. Family members mean well. They say, just rest, don't risk it, let me do it for you. And so chairs get used more than legs, walks get shorter or stop altogether. And soon, the body forgets how to move. What most people don't realize is that the body doesn't pause and preserve like a machine. It deteriorates like an untended garden. And the first place that erosion shows? The core. Not the kind you train in a gym, but the deep internal muscles responsible for balance, posture, and subtle shifts in motion. Muscles that quietly keep you upright, keep you from falling, keep you able to rise out of bed unaided. When those go unused, they shrink, and with them go independence and dignity. I knew a woman who used to walk her dog daily until she tripped on wet grass one morning. No injury, just bruised confidence. She stopped walking, then stopped gardening, then avoided stairs, and within months needed assistance for tasks she once did blindfolded. Not because her body failed her, but because fear did. Fear is sneaky. It dresses itself up as wisdom, wraps itself in the language of safety, but slowly builds a prison around your potential. And what's worse, the more inactive we become, the more frail we feel, which only feeds the loop. The world may cheer you for being prudent, but the body knows when it's being shelved. Now, this isn't a call to recklessness. Mobility with caution is different than immobility from fear. Use the handrail, wear the right shoes, ask for help when needed. But keep moving, because every day you sit still unnecessarily, you're not just losing strength, you're teaching your body to fade. So if you've stopped going to places you love, or avoid bending down, or fear stepping onto curbs without assistance, ask yourself, is it protection or permission to decline? Because the truth is, strength doesn't disappear overnight. It's given away one small surrender at a time. Long before the mind starts slipping or the body aches, there's a quieter disruption that most people miss: our relationship with light. It sounds poetic, but it's deeply biological. The human body is governed by an internal clock, the circadian rhythm, and it relies not just on time, but on exposure to natural light and darkness to regulate everything from mood and metabolism to immune function and memory. After age 80, this rhythm becomes incredibly fragile, like tuning a violin string that used to hold steady. Now just a little off makes the whole system feel disoriented. And yet, what do most older adults do? They stay indoors, curtains drawn, television on from dawn to midnight. The sun becomes a stranger, and artificial blue light takes over, confusing the brain into thinking day is night and night is day. That confusion disrupts melatonin release, fragments sleep, drains energy, fogs memory, and even weakens the immune system. I once met a man named Lewis who couldn't understand why he was exhausted by noon despite sleeping 8 hours every night. But 8 hours in darkness isn't the same as 8 hours of restoration if the body's rhythm is out of sync. The fix wasn't a pill. It was sunrise, 20 minutes each morning on the porch, eyes soaking in daylight, screens off an hour before bed. Within weeks, he felt sharper, slept better, and laughed more. But this problem is bigger than sleep. It's a sign of disorganization, a body losing its natural pulse. Vitamin D levels drop, bones weaken, mood dips, and the tragedy is that it's preventable. Light is free. but we've made it scarce in the name of safety, comfort, or convenience. If you're over 80 and haven't stood in the morning sun lately, or if your evenings glow with screens and fluorescent bulbs, consider this. You may not be tired because you're old. You may be tired because your body has forgotten what time it is, and the only way to remind it is to step into the light, quite literally, because the body doesn't just age from the outside, it breaks down when its inner rhythm is lost. And restoring that rhythm isn't just about living longer. It's about waking up to the life that's still waiting outside your window. By the time someone reaches 80, they've likely endured more loss than any story can summarize. A spouse, siblings, friends who once knew their laugh, pets that once followed their steps, sometimes even a child. The world sees them and nods respectfully, offering quiet condolences or a kind word at holidays. But what no one tells you is that grief doesn't expire. It evolves, and often it hides. For many elders, the deepest emotional burden isn't the loss itself, but the fact that they no longer feel permission to grieve it. They're told to be strong, move on, get used to it, as if pain gets softer with age instead of sharper with accumulation. And so, they suppress it. They smile, say, "I'm fine," wave away concern, and meanwhile, the sorrow they never unpacked begins to inhabit the body. Shallow breaths, tense shoulders, disrupted sleep, a digestion that falters, and an immune system dulled by years of internal strain. I once sat with a woman named Marianne, who hadn't cried since her husband died 8 years earlier. "I didn't want to be a burden," she said. Yet her nights were restless, her chest always felt tight, and her laugh, when it came, seemed borrowed. Emotional suppression after 80 doesn't look like breakdown. It looks like fatigue that won't lift, a spirit that dims for no reason, or the slow retreat from social spaces where memories might surface. Grief, unspoken, becomes inflammation. It becomes tension that no massage can fix, loneliness that no pill can dull, and a silence that no sound can break. The tragedy is that release is still possible, but it requires permission. Permission to say, "I miss him," without being pitied, to cry over a photo without apology, to scream into a pillow and know it's not weakness, but medicine. Those who live well past 80 with their soul intact are not those who avoided loss. They're the ones who learned to feel it out loud. Some wrote letters to people who would never read them. Some found solace in old songs or shared memories with a neighbor who had lost someone too. The method doesn't matter. The outlet does, because when the heart gets to breathe, so does the body. And if you've been holding something in for years, thinking silence would protect you, let this be your invitation to exhale. Your health depends on it more than you think. You might think it's the big things that keep us going: retirement dreams, legacy plans, grandkids. But the truth is, after 80, it's the small rituals that decide whether the soul still chooses to show up. Purpose doesn't always look like a mission. It can look like feeding the garden cat, folding the laundry just the way you like it, writing postcards to people you'll never meet again. When those little anchors disappear, when no one asks for your help, when the calendar becomes a blank canvas, no one's painting on, something begins to shift deep inside. It's not immediate. It's quiet, like a room gradually losing oxygen. Older adults who once woke with a spark now linger in bed a bit longer. Meals are skipped not from forgetfulness, but from a lack of interest, and movement slows because there's nowhere to go. The tragedy is, society has a way of packaging this as normal, as if irrelevance is a symptom of age instead of neglect. I met a man named Richard who used to volunteer 3 days a week at a community pantry. It wasn't glamorous work, just organizing cans, giving a kind word to struggling visitors, But when his back started acting up, his role was quietly retired. No one replaced it with anything meaningful, and within months, his days dissolved into endless channels of television static and naps he didn't want. The doctors said he was fine physically, but Richard had lost something essential, a reason to rise. Research confirms this over and over. When you remove routine, contribution, or belonging from someone's day, the body doesn't just get bored, it starts turning off systems, digestion, immune regulation, cognition. The heart stops caring if it beats. But when people find a way to serve, even something small, they hold on to vitality like a torch that refuses to go out. There was Ruth, 88, who every Monday wrote notes to elderly parishioners too frail to attend church, and every Thursday made soup for a shelter, even if she couldn't carry the pot herself anymore. Her doctor said her bones were brittle, but her spirit wasn't. And that spirit, more than any supplement or exercise plan, is what sustains life. Because the body only continues when the mind whispers, "We're still needed." So if your days have started to blur, if your presence feels optional instead of essential, ask not what's missing, but who still needs you, even in the smallest way. The answer to that question may be the one thing that keeps you alive long after your peers have faded. Here's the part we rarely talk about. People don't suddenly fade after 80 because of one dramatic event. It's not the birthday, the blood test, or even the fall in the hallway. It's the accumulation of tiny retreats, skipping the morning walk just this once, avoiding the market because it's chilly, letting someone else make the call, silencing grief because no one asks, leaving the light off one more day, and gradually forgetting what it felt like to matter. This isn't about blaming age. It's about recognizing how subtly decline disguises itself as comfort, and how gently life lets go of you when you stop reaching for it. We romanticize longevity, but we rarely study its real shape. It's not marked by grand achievements, but by patterns. The pattern of choosing to speak when you could stay silent, to move when stillness seems safer, to go outside even when no one is watching. And the good news, truly, is that just as this fade happens in increments, so does recovery. It doesn't take a transformation. It takes one deliberate decision per day. Open the curtains in the morning and sit in the light for 10 minutes. Smile at the clerk even if they don't know your name. Write a letter to someone you miss even if they'll never read it. Stretch your arms while brushing your teeth. Ask someone how their day was and mean it. These aren't just gestures. They're signals to your nervous system, your immune cells, your memory, that you are still participating. And when you participate, the body follows. It organizes itself around momentum. What gets expressed gets processed. What moves regenerates. What connects endures. The lesson here isn't that aging is optional. It's that disengagement is. You may not control your years, but you can shape their weight. And those who reach 90 with a twinkle in their eye and spring in their speech aren't lucky. They're often the ones who refused to vanish, even when the world grew quiet around them. So, if you felt yourself fading, not from illness but from absence, consider this your sign to press back, to declare, even in small acts, I'm still here. Because living beyond 80 isn't just about beating the odds. It's about insisting, gently but relentlessly, that the story isn't over. Longevity is not solely in our genes. It's in our patterns, our posture toward life, our choice to connect when silence seems easier. After 80, it's easy to feel that time owns us. But in truth, the minutes that matter most are the ones we use to remind ourselves we still belong. Reclaiming one moment, one ritual, one connection at a time. That's how we age, not just with years, but with grace and intention.